Hello friends, and welcome to the next chapter of On Purpose. In this video, we explore how we can be more intentional in our social lives and our relationships. Let's get started. Take a moment to still yourself again. Focus on your breathing. Intentionally breathe more deeply and slowly. And try to let go of any stories or presumptions about yourself, your relationships, your world and God. Anything that might keep you from opening to life in this practice. And I invite you to make a commitment to be receptive to anything that God or the universe may want to offer you through this practice. And then when you're ready, ask yourself, where am I now? Think about this particularly as it relates to your social life and relationships. And when you feel that you have a sense of an answer to that question, ask yourself, where do I want to be at the end of 2022? And try to keep your answers to these questions in mind throughout your practice today. In the last few years, I've quoted this one statement from Esther Perel more times than I can count. The quality of our relationships determines the quality of our lives. We all intuitively know this is true. Nothing impacts how we feel about ourselves, about our world, about life in general, like our relationships. This doesn't apply just to our immediate family. It includes our relationships at work, our relationships with others in the gym, with our neighbors. All of these things impact us massively. A few years ago, I was a regular at my local gym. I loved doing super circuits, particularly because they worked my whole body and they were quick and I didn't have a lot of time. And there was a special section of the gym that was set aside for the super circuit. It had a timer, it had all the necessary equipment, so that doing the circuit was really convenient. The only problem was that the layout of the whole gym made it much easier for people to use some of the more popular machines in the super circuit section rather than go and find those machines elsewhere in the gym. And that meant that those of us like me who were doing super circuits were often disrupted by people who weren't doing circuits using the machines that we needed. And this was in spite of there being a big sign saying that only people doing the circuits were allowed to use those machines. One day, as I was doing my circuit, I came to a bench that was being used by a guy who clearly was not doing the circuits. He'd been there for a while already. And so I asked him if he would mind giving me 30 seconds just to use the bench so I could continue my circuit and then he could return to using it once I'd moved on. He immediately got aggressive. He refused to move, even though he wasn't actually working out at that point, he was resting. I pointed to the sign and I asked him to observe the rules and allow me through, and I said I would just be as long as his rest time was, but he just got even more aggressive and he refused to move. And I realized that I wasn't going to make any progress with him. And so I moved on. But I now felt so bruised and unsafe that I couldn't continue my circuit. And so I walked around the gym finding alternative machines in other areas of the gym so that I could put distance between me and this guy. And I sort of created my own circuit. And then every time I went back to the gym, I found myself looking out for him so that I could avoid him whenever I was at the gym. I was actually quite relieved when circumstances meant I couldn't use that gym anymore. Now, this man had no real relationship with me, and yet this one threatening interaction with him completely messed up my experience in that gym. Have you ever experienced anything like this? So if our relationships have such a big impact on our lives, what do we need to do to keep our relationships healthy? And what intentions can we set for the coming year with regard to our social and relational life so that we can live more fully and courageously? For me, there's really only one essential quality to building and maintaining healthy relationships. And it's this: good and healthy communication. But as we all know, this is more complicated and more difficult than it seems. Communication is not just about what we say and how we say it. Every time we interact with another person, we're stepping into a unique communication environment, which is impacted by multiple factors within us and around us. I could do a whole series just on this topic, but for the purpose of this video, I want to offer just 2 suggestions for ensuring that your communication and therefore your relationships are the healthiest they can be. And the first suggestion is to ensure that the container for your communication is as strong and good as possible. A container is the physical, psychological, and emotional space within which your conversation will happen. If you've ever felt frustrated at trying to have a meaningful conversation in a loud coffee shop or club, you'll know how much your physical environment can impact the quality of your communication. And this is especially important when it comes to the most difficult or deep conversations that need to happen in almost all relationships. Physically, it's important that the space is suited to our conversation. If the space is too big, we feel exposed, our voices echo, and all of that hinders how well we hear each other and how much we get distracted. If the space is too small, we feel vulnerable because our personal space is being invaded and our voices can feel too loud. What size is best is really a subjective matter, and it needs to be decided between the participants in the conversation. But a good rule of thumb is to have enough space for everyone to feel comfortable, to feel that their personal boundaries are intact, while also feeling held and private and safe in the room without the walls closing in on us. But we don't just need a good physical container. Emotionally and psychologically, we also need to feel safe and protected and held if we are to have good communication. When we're afraid of judgment or rejection, or when we're carrying stress or hurt or baggage from previous interactions or experiences, that can all make communication so much harder. And so it can often be helpful to have what I call a meta conversation, a conversation about how the conversation will happen. And this can help us to get our baggage out of the way. It can help us focus on the actual person we're talking to. It can free us from unhelpful assumptions and filters that can get in the way of good communication. And generally, I find that the more difficult the conversation, the longer and slower the meta conversation needs to be. The more careful you need to be to understand exactly what's affecting your communication and how to navigate it well together. But of course, it can often be hard to keep from jumping into your main topic prematurely. And so we really need to be patient, and we need to constantly check in with one another to confirm when we feel the container has been set and we're ready then to go into the conversation that we need to have. So the first suggestion is try and get that container right. The second suggestion is that one of the best things we can do for our relationships is to listen. In fact, listening is far more important in communication than speaking, in my opinion. I've probably mentioned this before, but when I first became a father almost 32 years ago, I made a promise to myself that if my children were still talking to me when they reached adulthood, then I would consider myself a success as a parent. I soon realized that I had completely underestimated how much listening I would need to do. But after decades of trying to listen as carefully and attentively as I could, I'm really grateful to be able to say that I still have wonderful conversations with my 2 boys, and my relationship with them, it's just stronger and more life-giving than ever. The best listening happens when we're focused on trying to understand the other person's perspective and experience, not when we're waiting for an opportunity to give our view. And so asking clarifying questions and reflecting back what we've heard are classic tools for good listening. And so as you look at the year ahead, what intentions would you want to set for your social and relational life? Which relationships do you want to deepen? How are you intending to do that? What can you do to create better containers for your conversations and interactions? And how can you listen more effectively? Please share your intentions or any insights or suggestions you have for nurturing life-giving and healthy relationships. This is an area where it's so important that we learn from one another. And now take a moment just to sit with today's meditation. What spoke to you? What challenged you or excited you? What would you want to carry with you through the rest of the week? And now when you're ready, I encourage you to think about what you would want to add to your vision board this week. What images and symbols and words or anything else will help you to envision how you intend to live and do your relationships on purpose this year. You can also pause the video if you need to as you work with your vision board. And now as we bring this video to an end, and as we prepare to go into the rest of our weeks, I really want to encourage you to think about what intentions you're setting for your relationships and your life in 2022. What systems will you put in place to support your intentions? And what habits will you build into your life to make sure that your intention becomes a reality for you? Of course, I'm talking all about intentions and systems and habits and everything related to that on the Eva Faith blog throughout this series as well. So if you need more details, feel free to go and visit the blog and see what's happening there. The whole purpose of the series and the blog is that together they help us to make our intentions an integral and automatic facet of our lives. And so I really hope you can do that. And now I wish you an intentional week, healthier relationships, and an expanded capacity to live on purpose. See you next time.